All right, this morning we're going to continue to look at how do we thrive in a broken world. How do we thrive in a land that is against us? How do we thrive in a land that at times can even be hostile towards us? And we're going to look at a story, a situation that Daniel found himself in Daniel chapter 2. If you've got your Bible, go ahead and turn there. If you don't have a Bible, we've got Bibles in the backs of the chairs. Feel free to take one home with you, please. And we will have the words up on the screen, so if you're not sure where to look, it's okay. Don't worry about it. We will take care of that. But how many of you have ever found yourself in just a bad situation, okay? Through no fault of your own, you didn't do anything, you weren't, extraordinarily stupid or something or deserved to get in a bad situation, but you just ended up in a bad situation where bad things were going to happen. Whether it was at your job, whether it was with family, whether it's whatever the situation, but you've just, all of a sudden you come to a moment and you go, this is going to be bad. Anybody been there, or am I the only one who sits there and goes, what did I do to deserve that? Whether it's a company you're working for is going out of business, so you're getting laid off, whether, there's any number of things that happen. We end up in bad situations, right? And there's some times where when people go through a bad situation, where people go through a hard time, when things in life fall apart through no fault of your own, a lot of times people get seriously depressed. They get to where they question things. They begin wondering, what did I do? And maybe you've been there. Maybe you've had those same feelings, those same experiences where you just sit there and you go, I don't know what I did, and now I don't know how to handle this situation. We're going to talk about that, because if you think losing a job or getting in the middle of a family fight that you had no part of, or getting caught in some sort of feud or some sort of situation or something that you didn't deserve or do anything to be in, trust me, nothing is as bad as what Daniel finds himself in the middle of in Daniel chapter 2. Let's recap just a little bit what has happened to Daniel, okay? Daniel was born part of the royal line, if you will, of Israel, and he's taken captive because he is a good-looking young man. He is a smart young man. He has got wisdom. He's got the ability to learn. He's got all of these good traits that would make him a very important person in Israel. And when Israel is captured by Babylon, they take him and some of his friends and they take him off to Babylon. And to our record, to our knowledge, he never goes back to Israel again. He is forever in the land of the Babylonians. And that was a land that was, let's just say there weren't good relationships there, okay? It was a foreign land with a foreign king who served foreign gods and didn't care anything about who Daniel was or what he was doing. It didn't matter. But Daniel was brought in and he was put in the king's court because he was incredibly smart. He was incredibly bright. And there was all of these situations that began coming around. And then we find this situation in Daniel chapter 2. Now, later in life, Daniel would become one of those right-hand men to the kings. And he did this over several different kings and kingdoms and stuff that would come in and take over. He was always one of those guys. But this story is taking place before that ever happened. Okay? So at this time, Daniel is essentially a nobody. Okay? Like, he's got a place in the kingdom. He's got a job. He's one of the wise men. He's one of the guys who would be brought in on different things. But he wasn't one of the closest ones to the king or anything like that. He didn't have much of a voice. And he finds himself in a bad situation. Let's go ahead and look and see kind of what begins to happen in this. Maybe. Nope. You want to go ahead and hit the next one? I'll just tell you when to do it, and you can do it. So Daniel chapter 2, it says, in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was troubled. Nebuchadnezzar was the king at that time. And his sleep left him. Then the king commanded that the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans be summoned to tell the king his dream. So they came in and stood before the king. Have you ever woke up in the morning or in the middle of the night and you had a dream that was so vivid, so clear, and you remember it? And you're like, there's got to be a meaning behind this. Anybody ever had that? Or you're going, what? Why? Why did I have this dream? Why was it that clear? Why was it, other than the dream where you're falling, because that one's pretty clear every single time as you wake up. But those dreams where you just wake up and you go, huh? Why? Why that? What was that about? Where did that come from? Now, here's what we've got to understand. During this time period, people firmly believed that the gods would give messages through dreams. That was completely acceptable. If you went and you said, the gods gave me a dream and this is what it means, people would move mountains because of dreams. Okay, they believed very, very firmly that those dreams had meanings and that those dreams were meant to influence them, and there would be horrible consequences if they didn't do what the dream was saying. Okay, so that's kind of the culture that this is taking place in. Now, how many of you have ever had one of those clear, vivid dreams and you woke up in the morning and you remember a picture of it and nothing else? And you sit there and you go, I know I had a dream. And I know it was a pretty cool dream, but I don't remember it. I've done that. It's like you look at your spouse in the morning and you're like, I had a dream last night. Really? What was it about? I don't know. And it bothers me. So you spend the rest of the day trying to remember the dream that you had because you feel like there's a reason. Now, imagine multiplying that feeling times 100 because you're the king of a nation and you believe that the gods tell you things through dreams. So Nebuchadnezzar wakes up, has a dream he can't remember, and he can't go back to sleep. And it keeps happening. So he finally goes and he gets all of the wise men, all the enchanters, all of the sorcerers, everyone who should be able to interpret a dream. And he brings them in and they come before the king. And then this next portion happens. Go ahead and it says, and the king said to them, I had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream. Then the Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. And the king answered to the Chaldeans, the word from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you shall be torn limb from limb, and your houses shall be in ruins. Now, let's just be honest. If you're one of those guys, that's a bad day, right? Because you're going, yeah, I can interpret dreams. I know how to do this. If nothing else, I'll make it up. You know what I mean? And you're like, all right, I'll do this. Tell me the dream. And he's like, no, I'm not telling you the dream. What do you mean you're not telling me the dream? I'm not telling you the dream. That's like somebody coming in to a store and saying, how much is it? Well, what do you want? I'm not telling you. How much is it? Like, no, that's not how this game works, guys. And it's one of those deals. It's a bad situation because they're left sitting there going, so now I've got to discover what this guy's dream was. And then the interpretation? If you can imagine, if you can be in that kind of situation, that's one of those things where when people ask you to do something that's just literally impossible and you want to look at them like they've lost all of their marbles or something, got hit in the head, something happened, but things aren't right anymore, right? And it was one of those situations. So let's look and just see kind of how they respond. Go to the next one. Verse 10, it says, and the Chaldeans answered the king and said, there is not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand. For great and powerful king has asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or Chaldean. The thing that the king asks is difficult, and no one can show it to the king except the gods whose dwelling is not with flesh. And because of this, the king was angry and very furious and commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. Now, that you might sit here and go, Nebuchadnezzar's got some anger issues if he's going to kill everybody for not being able to tell them a dream he had and forgot, and then the interpretation of it. Okay? And the guys are sitting there going, how How am I supposed to do that? You're asking me to do this and saying if I don't, you're going to kill me. You know, you're asking me to do something I can't. Nobody can do this except the gods. And so then he goes out. He doesn't just order that the guys who are, standing before him telling him this. He's not just saying, you guys are going to die now. He's saying every wise man, every enchanter, all of them in the kingdom are going to die. And it was a blanket statement. Now, just think about this, okay? Daniel is one of those guys. Like, Daniel's one of the wise men in Babylon. And he wasn't even there. Like, when the king said all of this, he wasn't there. Because we know that later, Daniel goes and tries to get an audience with the king so that he can talk to him about some of it. And so Daniel's not even there when this happens. And all of a sudden, one of the guards shows up to Daniel's house, knocks on the door, and says, hey, we got to go. The king's ordered me to kill all of you. Can you think it's bad when you find out you're losing a job? Imagine getting that phone call. Hey, everybody in your section has been ordered to die today. So I'm going to come get you, take you away, and we're going to execute you a little bit later. So it's like, what? That's the situation that Daniel finds himself in. And it's a bad situation. And the crazy part about it is Daniel had nothing to do with it. Think about it. Do you think that Daniel even knew that the king was having dreams that he couldn't remember? Probably not. He probably didn't have a clue. All of a sudden, he just gets the guard knocking on his door, saying, hey, it's time to die. And he's left going, and in fact, at the time, they wouldn't even tell him why. All they said is, hey, the king has ordered that all of the wise men in Babylon be killed. So let's go. And he's like, wait a minute, why? And he keeps pestering and keeps going. Why? Why is this happening? Why does he want this to happen? Why has it got to happen so fast? Why not give us a little bit of time to make things right? Why so fast? Why? What's going on? And so finally the guard tells him, look, he's been having these dreams. He's not able to sleep. And because of that now, he's ordered that all the wise men be killed because nobody can tell him what the dream is or the interpretation. So Daniel does something that is a little bit bold. He says, okay, tell the king I'd like to see him. Don't kill anybody yet, okay? Just wait. Don't kill anybody. I want to talk to the king. Can you make that happen? He says, sure. So Daniel gets to go in and he talks to the king and he says, King, he goes in and he says, King, would you give me just a little bit of time that I can go and consult my God and see if I can bring you an interpretation? He says, give me some time and I will bring you the interpretation. And the king says, fine. So Daniel has just gone in and said, hey, this thing that everybody else has been saying is impossible. I'll do it. Give me just a little bit of time. I'll make sure it happens. Okay? Like, that's bold. Okay? Some would say that's crazy. But at the same time, he was about to die anyway, right? So if nothing else, he's giving it a chance. Daniel is in a horrible situation. And he did nothing. I mean, Daniel didn't even want to be in Babylon, right? He didn't leave his family and go to Babylon and say, I want to become one of the wise men of Babylon. That's been my aspiration since I was 5. That never happened. He was captured, taken to Babylon, forced to train as one of the wise men, became a wise man, and is really still held captive. And now the king's going to kill him because they can't fulfill this promise or this requirement that is just completely ridiculous. It's crazy, right? Now, we never find ourselves in quite this type of a situation. Okay? We don't have somebody knocking on our door saying, hey, because, the guys you work with can't interpret a dream, or because the guys you work with couldn't fulfill this order, or because somebody, did this, you're all going to die now. That's like if you worked at McDonald's and somebody burned a burger, and now you all get fired. or worse, thrown in jail. I mean, think about it. It's completely unreasonable. It's completely crazy. And you're left sitting there going, God, why is this happening? I didn't do anything. I didn't deserve this. Some of you might know the feeling if you've ever had a spouse cheat on you, or if you've had someone who's just abandoned you, or if you've had a friend who stabbed you in the back, or a business partner who was embezzling the money, or anything like that. Something where you sit there and you go, I didn't do anything to deserve this. Like, it's one thing to get in trouble if you deserve it, right? It's something entirely different to get in trouble when you don't. Okay, when I was growing up, my little brother, who's 11 months younger than me, he was the bad kid in the family. He just was, and we had. I don't remember this, but my parents tell me this story, where she had sandwiches for us to eat. Now, like any little kid, you never want what mom makes, right? Doesn't matter what happened. If you've got kids, you know that your kids at some point will look at you and say, I don't want it. You ate it yesterday, I don't understand. And my brother Jeremy did not want his sandwich, but he wanted that bag of chips, right? And my mom's like, no, you're not doing that. So Jeremy gets a bag of chips and shoves his sandwich in the chips behind all of it, so that then he's like, my sandwich is gone, and then begins eating the chips, right? My brother was a genius, but if only he would use his powers for good and not evil. And he does this, and guess what happens? Okay, my brother, while he was incredibly intelligent to think outside of the box and putting the sandwich in the chips and all of this, he then made the mistake of just putting the bag of chips back on the counter instead of throwing it away. Guess who found out? Mom. And then my mom's going around going, who did this? Who did it? And I'm like, not me. I was the good kid. Why she didn't believe me initially, I don't know. But I'm like, not me. And then my brother goes, well, not me either. So my mom looks at us, and she does the thing that so many of us parents have done, and says, well, you're both going to get spankings until one of you tells me the truth, right? So guess who she starts with? Not the bad kid, not the one who lies and steps over the line when she says not. No, she starts with me. And so I get whooped. And then after I'm done getting beat, my brother goes, it was me. I'm like, dude, And parents wonder why brothers and sisters fight like they do. It was one of those things where all of a sudden you're being punished for something that you didn't deserve. I didn't hide the sandwich in the chip bag. I didn't deserve this. Or like some of those other instances, I didn't deserve having somebody to cheat on me. I was faithful. Or I didn't deserve having somebody ruin my business and stealing all of our money. I was diligent in this. And it's this horrible, tough thing. And you sit there and you go, God, why me? Why me? So Daniel finds himself in this, and he comes and he says, King, give me some time to do this. Give me a chance. And the next step that he takes is so crucial. Okay, and this is something that all of us can do. Okay, let's look and see what Daniel does right after he talks to the king. It says, then Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions. And he told them to seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his companions might not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision of the night. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. What was the first thing Daniel did? He went home and he gathered his friends around him who believed in God and trusted in God and said, guys, will you pray? here's the thing. This is not a quick, easy, fast step. This isn't something that just overnight happens. This is something that took time to cultivate. These were Daniel's companions. These were the men that he did life with. Okay? These were the guys who knew his struggles, who knew his faith, who knew and had stood with him in times when they were hard and when times were good. And he goes to them and he says, guys, this is bad. Will you pray with me? So there's two steps to this. First, you've got to build around you a community. Okay? This idea of a Christian community. Okay? We're all on a journey. We're all on a journey of faith, and we're all walking towards one goal, and that is a deep relationship with God. Now, some of us are farther along on the journey than others, right? And some of us have been on the road for a really long time, but we haven't gone very far. We're all on this journey together, and the truth of the matter is, if you never get other people around you, beside you, that are walking with you, encouraging you, and doing all of this, guess what? You're not going to make it very far. You're not going to do it. See, there's something that happens when you're around other people. Okay? And the best example I have is when you're trying to work out, whether it's jogging, whether it's weightlifting, whether it's anything, and you're trying to get in better shape, and you try to do it on your own. Anybody ever tried to just get in shape all on your own without anybody else helping you? Okay, come on, you can admit it, all right? I'm not the only one who has failed at that like 50 times, okay? You begin to start, and you're like, that's it. Every morning, I'm going to do push-ups, and I'm going to do sit-ups, and I'm going to run a mile. And after you sit up out of bed, push yourself out from under the covers, and walk upstairs, you're like, forget this. This is dumb, you know? And you don't do it. And you're like, I can't do it. But there's something else that happens when you've got a companion who's working with you. Okay? I had, in high school, a buddy who him and I had weightlifting together. His name was Hans. Okay? Hans was this Hispanic kid who was built like a house, okay? Just solid. And I was a string bean, okay? And we would go and we would work out, and Hans was the guy who, as he's, bench pressing 225 or something, and I'm, doing 100 pounds less than that, and, he was the one who pushed me day after day after day. Didn't matter if I was sick, didn't matter if I didn't feel like it, didn't matter. Hans was going to be there. And he was going to push me. And I was going to do my best to push him. And when those weights got too heavy and he accidentally put on 25 extra pounds on each side, and I'm sitting there struggling for life because the bar's stuck on my chest, Hans is there to help get it off. I mean, think about it. Having that person who's pushing you along, all of a sudden you don't get to just say, I quit. You continue to go. You continue to move. You continue to make progress. Why? Because there's somebody else who's walking alongside of you, working with you, doing all of this. That doesn't take time. Or that does take time. That doesn't happen instantly. You've got to take time, and you've got to begin to build relationships. Let me just tell you this, okay? If you come to church and you come on a regular basis and you come in and you don't really talk to anybody and you don't build a relationship, and it's easy for us to say, well, nobody comes and talks to me. They're all worried about the same thing you are. Okay? If you don't ever come in, you don't ever build a relationship, you don't ever begin talking with people, trying to find common ground on things, trying to find someone that you get along with, someone that you can talk to, and you just leave, but you keep coming and you leave, you come and you leave, you will be so much weaker than somebody who comes, who gets several, not very many. No, Daniel only had 3 friends. that he had around him, but a couple of people that he was able to grab and say, here's the problem. Here's what I'm in. Here's the struggle. Here's what's happening. Here's the situation I'm in. Here's my problem. Will you pray with me about this? And then they begin to do that. Now, there's a couple of sides to this, because the first one is gathering around you that Christian community, that group of people. And really and truly, this is why we have some of the small groups that we have, okay? This is why we've got Thursday night Bible study. This is why we've got the empty nesters. This is why we've got moms and dads. And if you don't feel like you fit in any of those, and you think there needs to be another group, come and talk to me. I will gladly empower you to do that, okay? Because you need to have a sense of community. This is why we do those groups. We're doing this because if you're trying to do it on your own, you're going to get discouraged. You're going to get tired. You're going to get going, and you're going to hit a rough spot, and you're going to hit a section where you don't feel like you can move forward anymore, and you're going to just sit there and wait because you're doing it alone. When you're doing it alone, it's so hard. When you're doing it with some companions who you have gathered around you, who know your struggles, who know all of this, and then you're going, guess what? That journey gets a little bit easier. It's still hard, but it gets a little bit easier because you've got someone around you. Now, after that, notice what Daniel did, okay? In this portion of Scripture, there's something that just boggles my mind, okay? Daniel just found out that he's potentially going to die, right? Bad day. And he's going in and he's saying, hey, give me a little bit of time and I'll have everything figured out. I'll come in and I'll tell you. Now, Daniel knows he can't do this. That's why he immediately grabs his friends and he has them pray. But notice something about that passage. He has his friends pray, and God reveals it to him in a vision of the night. In other words, Daniel still slept that night. Now, how many of you have ever been in a bad situation and you just can't sleep anymore? You know, you sit there and you struggle and you're worried about it and you're sitting there going and you're like, man, I don't know how this is going to work out. I don't know how this is going to happen. And you sit there and you may be in bed and you may just lay there with your eyes open the whole time going, how in the world is this going to work? How is this going to happen? And you sit there and you fret and you toss and you turn and you grunt and your spouse is going, what's wrong? And you're like, nothing. And, you know, and it's just over and over and over as you're struggling with this and you don't sleep at all. Or maybe you take, you know, the other route and you sit there and you say, I'm going to pray all night about this. You fall asleep after a while, it all happens, you know. But you say, I'm gonna pray and I'm not gonna, and you're worried and you're going and you're pleading and you're begging, and that's good in a sense, but notice that Daniel comes and he gets his friends. He says, guys, will you join me and will you pray? And then he goes to sleep that night. Can you imagine sleeping when you know if you get this wrong that you're going to die? I mean, I'd be racking my brain. What could the dream of be? Should I make something up? Would he even know if I made it up? I don't know. Can I get away with this? You know, what can I do? But Daniel comes in and he goes, guys, let's pray. And then he did something that's so hard. First, he trusted his friends to be praying with him. Then he trusted God. That's all it was. See, those bad situations you're in, those bad situations you're facing that we all face through no fault of your own, you're sitting here going, what can I do to make this right? And there's nothing because you didn't do anything wrong. All of these things, all of these struggles that you find yourself in, all of this that's happening and you're going, how do I do it? How do I fix this? How do I fix this? How do I fix this? When you finally give it to God and you just say, God, you've got to take this and I need your help with this, then you take your hands off of it. You say, God, you're in charge. You're in control. and I'm going to sleep tonight. See, Daniel had a couple of things figured out. The first was that he needed other people around him, and the second was that God was in charge and he wasn't. So what ends up happening? Of course, after this, he had made the dream known, and then he goes back in and he goes and he talks to the king and he says, "King, what you have asked can't be accomplished by anybody. Nobody is smart enough, nobody is good enough, but there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries to people. Here was your dream." And he lays out this dream about a statue, and he gives the prophecy for it about nations that would come after the empire of Babylon and the ones after that. And he was predicting nations that would rise and fall. And then he said, but there is a kingdom that's like a boulder that will come down, and it's the kingdom of God, and it will crush every kingdom. And he gives this interpretation, and he does all of this, and then there's the response of the king after that. And this is where we begin to see something. So let's look at the response of the king. The king answered and said to Daniel, "Truly your God is God of gods and Lord of kings, and a revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery." Then the king gave Daniel high honors and many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. Here's the interesting thing. This is a pagan king. This is a king who believes that there is a plethora of gods, and he believes that he is a great and mighty king. Okay? He has accomplished much. He has conquered enemies. He has conquered cities. He has built an empire. He's done all of this, okay? And all of a sudden he goes, "Your God is the God of gods, and it's the Lord, the ruler of kings." Like, he acknowledges that. So, what does that mean for us in our struggle in all of this? I want you to think about this next slide for a little bit. What if it's not about you? Like, that's kind of a hard statement to think about. What if it's not about you? Now, if we can just be honest with ourselves and vulnerable for a little bit and think about it, we can be incredibly selfish, incredibly self-centered. We can believe that everything revolves around us. You hear people whispering in the corner, you walk by and they stop, and suddenly you think they're talking about you. Or it's like those times where you walk somewhere and all of a sudden they begin speaking Spanish or some other language that you don't understand, and you're going, "They're talking about me, aren't they?" Okay? You all know what I'm talking about. And you sit there and you go, "What are they saying about me? Do they think I'm just, what's going on? Why?" What if it's not about you? See, it's like Tristan whenever he tries to eavesdrop. That kid has ears as big of an elephant. He hears everything. It's a problem. And then he goes, "What were you saying about me? I wasn't even talking about you." You stop. Because naturally we all sit here and go, "They're talking about me. It revolves around me," right? The entire universe and the galaxies revolve around a center point somewhere, so that center point might as well be me, right? Makes perfect logical sense to me. And we get this in mind and we think that everything that happens is about me. But what if it's not? What if your struggle, what if your pain, what if that bad situation that you find yourself in the middle of has very little to do with you? I mean, just think about it. what if you spend all this time going, what did I do to deserve this? What sin did I commit that God would allow this to happen? Why is God doing this to me? Why is this happening? Why? And the whole reason is it's not for you. Maybe it's for someone else. Like think about it, okay? This situation that Daniel found himself in. Bad situation, right? Everybody's going to die. He's one of the everybody, okay? And he goes in and he prays and he seeks God in all of this, and he does it, and he comes back and he does. Now, what if that whole situation had nothing to do with Daniel? What if it had everything to do with the king? And everything to do with the wise men? Because guess what? All of a sudden this king, this ruler of an empire, is praising God. Like the one true God, saying He's greater than all the other ones. He's bigger than all the other ones. And now he's putting Daniel in a position to where Daniel's got influence on this pagan foreign king, and Daniel is now able to make things happen and influence this king for God. Now that's one situation. Imagine being one of the magicians, enchanters, wise men who was about to die because you were incompetent of doing what the king asked. But somebody else's God was able to do it. What kind of thoughts would be going through your head in that situation? Just think about it. What if your pain isn't about you? See, here's the thing that we've got to understand. In the grand scheme of all of it, it's not about me. It's not about you. And the things I go through in life are not about me. There have been some incredibly painful and difficult seasons of my life that I look back and I go, God, why? And in reality, it wasn't about me. It wasn't about me at all. It was about the people that could be touched through that. Because here's the thing. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's not about any of us in this room. It's not even about this church collectively. It's not about us as a group even. It's all about Him. All of it. It's all about Him. Your pain, your struggle, is an opportunity for God to receive glory and honor. Now you might sit here and say, that's kind of messed up that He would use my pain for His glory and His honor. Well, no, it's not, because He's the only one who deserves glory and honor anyway. He's the God of the universe. He is the God of gods and the King of kings. Like, He is it. He is the reason. If you're going through a tough time, maybe you just sit there and you say, God, I don't know what this is for, but may it bring honor to you. And would you help me get through it? And if you don't have those people in your life that you need to just talk to and ask them to pray with you and that they'll seek God with you, maybe you can begin asking, God, would you help me find some of those people? That they'd come around me, that they would spur me on, that they would push me so that God can get glory, not me. And then sit back. See what happens. See what God chooses to do. I'm sure that Daniel had no clue what was going to happen. Daniel didn't sit there the day that the guard knocks on his door and says, hey, king said to kill all of you. He didn't immediately think, oh, this is going to be good because I'm going to go and I'm going to pray and God's going to give it to me, and then I'm going to go and tell the king, and then the king's going to worship God, and then he's going to promote me to a high position. Everything's going to be great, and it's going to be this awesome story later. No, Daniel didn't think that way. Daniel found himself in a situation, a bad situation, through no fault of his own, and he turned and he said, God, I need you in this. And he gathered his friends around him. He didn't face it alone. He didn't face it by himself. He gathered those people around him and he said, God, help me. And God came through in a big way. In a big way.